I will do a very quick intro on the apps that we offer, and then Smiley will get straight into talking about planning for your crossing. Yes, so how do we access these tools? I'm sure that most of you would be familiar with the PredictWind app. It's where you go when you sign up to PredictWind. It is more and more commonly used these days than the offshore app, mainly even in passages, um, due to Starlink and the bandwidth that's available. So today, that's mainly what will be talked about is the PredictWind app and website with the weather routing tool. So you can use that anywhere where you have a solid Wi-Fi or internet connection. It doesn't save data offline, but it's the app that you use at home. And as we say, you can use that on your boat with Starlink. It's the easiest way, and works very well. Next week we do another webinar where we will cover off the offshore app and talk about how you use the offshore app and use that on different satellite connections. And so that'll be covered in next week's webinar. You can use that if you're on Starlink as well. So it's worth watching both of these webinars if you're serious about learning how to use these tools. So with that, I will stop sharing and hand over to Smiley. I'm sure he'll give us some amazing insights.
Thanks, Nick, and welcome everyone. I'm sure you're all excited. Your boat's almost ready and you're thinking about crossing the Atlantic, so that's all good stuff. I'll get straight into screen sharing myself. And hopefully you can see this wonderful set of climate data. So where I am here, I'm actually in the PredictWind forecast website. Okay, so the look and feel of this is very similar to the PredictWind app. So you'll be just logging in to predictwind.com, and here you are. You have a whole fantastic array of weather information here. So when we're sort of looking at crossing any ocean at any point in time, it's really about seasonality. Seasonality is the number one, and that's why you're looking at doing this coming up. Sort of through November to January would sort of be typically the seasonality for an east-west Atlantic crossing of sort of 2,700 nautical miles from the Canary Islands. And you can sort of see with this climate data we have here in PredictWind, which is under Tools, Climate Data, we have these wind roses. So pilot charts have been around for 200 years or more. A fantastic tool. But what we have here, we have all these wind roses, and what it is, it's the ECMWF model, and it's 10 years of rolling average data sets. So from looking at this, so this is a global thing. You can go all around the world. If you're doing other passages, across the Pacific, it's the same sort of information. But from here, you can see why we go this way, because you wouldn't do the northern route. So if I click on one of these wind roses, we get sort of, it's more northeast, there's a bit of east, and it gives us all that detail. So this is where you always want to start. So you have a good understanding of this. And like I say, it's all about seasonality. So from here with PredictWind, we've got a weather routing tool. And so the weather routing tool, there's an algorithm for sailboats and there's one for powerboats, and they're completely different. So if you've got a sailboat, which I assume most of you have, as you'll be coming into sail routing here. Okay, left-hand menu. So I've already set up a route. Here you can see I'm in the Canaries here. I've got my green start, and I've got my red down here in St. Lucia, and this is the passage I'm going to undertake. So the first thing is, realistically, you need to get used to the tool. I'd be using it, at least a month out from leaving. I'd make sure all my preferences, all my polars, all those sort of things are set up. So to do that, across the top of here. Now, what I will say with the forecast website, the look and feel is pretty similar, but some of the UI, you won't see this across the top. You'll have to go to the settings wheel top right. If you've got your app open now, there's a settings wheel up here when you're on this weather routing page, and this is where you would enter this information. So I've got my routing preferences here, and just some bits and pieces at the top. I've got follow map when animating the route. I want to show extreme weather warnings. I'll talk about sail charts, but I don't want to show those on the route, but you can. I'm doing fastest time. You can do comfort. But where we get down into the nitty-gritty here, we've got our boat polars. So what our polars are, it's the performance of your vessel in any sort of given wind angle and wind speed. Okay, so for this example here, I've selected predefined and I'm a Peterson 44, but there's a drop-down list here. There's a whole bunch of different boats. So see if your boat's on the list. If it's not on the list, then just pick a similar boat, because it's better to use the predefined than it is to use the simple sail polars. So we talk about the sail polars. They're here. They're very simple. Upwind at 50, at 90, and downwind at 160 and 15 knots of breeze. So if you've got I guess, a fairly slow boat across the range, you could use this, but if you can find something on the predefined, you're much better off. We've got another one here, advanced. So that's advanced. You know, you might have some polars from another platform which you can import, okay? Or if you're in predefined and you probably might have done the Atlantic crossing and you're thinking about the return trip, you've got some sort of written down polars, you might want to come in here and copy across to advanced polar, come in here, and you can edit these. Okay, so these are just true wind speeds here, and then we've got true wind angle and the boat speeds. So it's pretty simple, and you can see out the side here, there's a polar curve. So this is what we mean by boat polars. It's the performance of your vessel through the wind range. So if I go back to predefined, I've chosen a Peterson 44. My actual boat's similar to that. It's a Peterson 46. But what I do know is the polars, because it's all light ship, designers and manufacturers want to sell boats. And yeah, that's how it is with new sales. But here we go. We won't be doing that. You know, I've got 100 meters of chain. I'm full of spares, full of water, full of food, full of fun things. So I won't be hitting these targets. So we've got this thing called the polar speed adjustment. So that's just a downcasting these numbers. So for upwind, I'm saying, well, I want to take 5% off my upwind boat speed performance. So I'll put 95 here. Downwind, I'm pretty fast. So I'm going to be on the 100. But at night time, I'm going to take it a little bit easier, because why wouldn't you? Might put a reef in at night. I might even drop this down to 80. So what that is taking another percentage adjustment off your adjusted polars. So it just makes it more real if that's how you sell your boat. But what you want to do is, when you've actually set this up, you want to run quite a few weather routes and just see if the results look reasonable to the performance. So you can always come back in here and tweak it. So that's not right. Let's try 80. That looks more reasonable for my boat. Okay, don't worry about this too much. Down into here, we have wave polars. So for each vessel that you can see on that list there, we have we've got the dimensions of your vessel. So these dimensions are here. So we take the displacement, we take the waterline, we take the canoe draft. So that's without the keel, okay, or the centerboard, and then we model that vessel. And it's how the boat performs in that a wave set. Okay, so we're not just talking about, we're talking about the primary, secondary, tertiary, and wind waves. So it's a really good tool, and we'll get to that later. But if you want to change, these are sort of hard coded for the predefined here. If you did want to change those, you would basically come in here, copy across to advanced polars, choose advanced polars, come down here, and then you can edit these. Okay, and you can see we've modeled monohulls, catamarans, trimarans, power monohulls, power catamarans. So make sure if you come in here, if you're a monohull, Don't be a catamaran, okay? Don't use this. This is the old-fashioned way of doing it. So have this toggled off and have this toggled on. So I'll go back to my predefined. So that's pretty much the polar setup, and I have no idea of, we'll roll down here, sorry. I've got my default. So what we have with PredictWind here, we have CMAPs of, so a charting, we've got charts underlying here. So CMAPs is the one we use. And this is just a depth avoidance. So you can have it land 2 meter, 5 meter. I want the router to sort of get there. I mean, clearly if I was doing the Bahamas, I'd have to be almost land it so shallow, but you know, where we are, I'm happy with 5. Talk about this. So what we're doing when we're doing the routing, we're taking into consideration tidal currents at the start, and we're taking into consideration the ocean currents as you go down the route. And you do have a couple of options here. So you've got this one, the RTOFS. I find on average, the Mercator does the better job. It doesn't mean it's doing a better job all the time, but I find on average it does. Now, what I will say, when you are testing your polars, which we're going to show the output in a minute, you probably want to deselect this. So deselect this. So when you look at the speed over ground, you're not getting influence with some current. Okay. So that's that. Bit of a freeze out there. Right, so back up here, the other thing I haven't discussed is motoring. So the algorithm is smart enough, if you've ticked this, where there's periods where the boat speed is less than a number. So my boat in flat water is probably 7 knots, racing to the marina to go to the yacht club for a beer. But out in the ocean, it's economic revs for me. I haven't got endless diesel. You know, I might have 3 or 4 days max. So I'm quite happy to sail. So I'd have this at 5 at 2, just so make sure you're not getting carried away here, that you've got, you know, 6 and 5 or 7 and 5. Let the boat sail, because that's what you're there for. So that's that. I will have a quick talk about the sail crossover chart, because it's a new feature, and what it is actually based on your sail inventory. So it's something which you fill out. For all the wind angles and wind speeds, it gives you a chart. So I've set my mainsail up. I've got running a full main, first reef, second reef, third reef, trysail, and you can see as I go up the true wind speed, the true wind angle, this is how my sails, you know, this is the full main, how it sets up. The orange here is the first reef, second reef, third reef, and if it's got really ugly, I'm into the trysail. And I've done the same for the head sail here. So once we do the results, you'll see that I've got, you know, I've got kept it pretty simple here. I've got spinnaker, I've got my staysail, genoa filled once, 2 fills on the genoa, and I've got my storm jib. Okay, so that's that. You can edit. This is all for you. You can import, but what I do suggest is it's for you. It's your boat. You go through this, and it's a good reminder of what you have on board, what you don't have on board. So it's a pretty cool feature. So let's go to sail routing now. So here we are. We're at sail routing. Now, with the sail routing, I've already set these waypoints, and you know, you can clearly move those along. And when you're done running the weather routing, it's all about the latest information. So clearly, this is where we're starting, but you know, day 1, you know, we could be here. Day 2, we could be here. Day 3, we could actually be down here. Wherever we are, you want to be running this weather routing twice a day when the models are updated. It's very important. So I would tend to write down the update times, put them on a piece of note paper, put a note, stick it on the nav station so you know when. So once they've all rolled in, let's do some more weather routing. Okay. So if I go up here, you can see this is my lat and long. Okay, so I've actually, and you can save courses. I did this before, so Canaries to where we're going is here, but you can edit this. If you have if you're using an iPad, you can use the internal GPS. So this button here will ping you to your green start. If you didn't have a GPS enabled device, maybe your laptop, then you would need to manually enter your lat long here. Okay, so that's that little feature. What we have here, I'll just mention this while we're here. So there's another cool sort of few cool things here. We can actually add waypoints. Now, we don't suggest you add waypoints, so that, technically speaking, will force the router to that white dot, or I could do a rounding. So if I did another one, which if I do another one, I could do it. I can make these port or starboard roundings, but what you really want to do is let the router do its thing. You have to have a good reason to put some waypoints in it. So that's that feature. Turn those off. What I will say, there's this feature called boundaries. Now, where this is pretty cool, if you want to force the router further south, maybe there's fishing fleets you want to avoid. Maybe there's been a safety notification of some pirate activity in an area. You could use this boundary feature. So the boundary is basically making creating a boundary, creating a box. So within that box, when we run the route, it won't go through here. Okay, so that's a really cool feature. Turn that off. Let's go to the routes. Well, you'll also see on the website here previously run routes. So that's previous routes I've run. So that, just so you know, if you've changed a few parameters, you can go and have a look at those routes again, the last 5. So it's quite a cool one. So let's just run a route instead of talking about it. Let's push this button here. So all roads lead to that blue download arrow top right, and it's going to take some time to calculate. So it could take up to 2 to 3 minutes, because what's actually happening here, we're sending all that information back to the router. So where your start waypoint is, your finish waypoint is, your boat polars, any adjustments on those. It's looking at the tidal data, it's looking at the ocean data, and it's clearly looking at all the wind data. So it will take a while to roll in. Okay. So what, as Nick was alluding to, this forecast website and the PredictWind app you can use with Starlink. You cannot use the website or the PredictWind app with an Iridium Go, with a Go exec, or any other low bandwidth solution like a SSB with a Pactor modem, or a 9555 with an optimizer. So this is really for sort of high speed internet. Okay. So here we're still calculating. Let's see what we get. So generally this route, it's pretty much trade sailing. It's should be a pretty easy route. Touch wood. They used to sail there by going south, the butter would melt and you'd turn right, but we've got a bit more sophisticated. So here we are. The routing is, I'll just move these zoom controls. The routing's completed. And what I have here, I have more zoom controls. I have a weather map which is populated, and if I look down the bottom here, bottom right here, it is the PWG 50 kilometer resolution model, and I can change that, and I've got it on wind arrows. You can change the model here. So PWG, PWE, ECMWF, GFS, Spire, and UKMO. When you default into the PredictWind app or the forecast website, you're on that animated view. Okay, so that's the animated view, which is great. Love it. But I enjoy the wind arrows, just because I get these contour lines, which you don't get. Okay, so the parameters here, wind, I've got all these other parameters here. So let's just go to the ECMWF model. I'm looking at wind. I've got rain, cloud, air temp, gust, cape, wave, currents, sea temp. Okay. I've got this wonderful tool called GMDSS toggled on. Right. Now, why we like that toggled on? What it is, a GMDSS is a text-based forecast. The world's broken up to mid areas and it's their advisories. Okay. And PredictWind's taken it one step further because it was just really difficult to work out, what it was sort of saying. So what we've done here is, or where it was located. So what you can see here, I've got a low here. I've got this guy going on here. Let's have a look at that. It's a tropical depression. Looking at a grid, looking at a map, that's sort of quite difficult to pick up, but you can see that there. And if I click on the, should bring up what it is, or maybe not. Let's go here. This one here. Let's get these zoom controls out the way, Nick. Anyway, must be me. That what we'll do, if you click on that line, it'll populate exactly what that's talking about. But this is another way of looking at the general synoptic overview. Always use these maps that we've got here. I'll just get rid of this one as well. Right, just use these maps. So I'll just move this forward so you can see what's happening here is the boat. Go full screen. You can see the boat is moving through the systems, okay? So it's moving through, I'll slide that through. It's moving through that ECMWF and it's taking the high road. You can see it's taking the, so what we've got here, we're looking for consensus with the routing. So what happens here is the routes have actually, they're not, some are going high, some are going low. So there's no consensus there. And we'd have to dig into that, why that is. They're coming together more here, but a couple have taken the high road. So how you would do that, you'd be looking at your observations, what you're seeing, where you are. You've been keeping an eye on the barometer, all those things. You've got the head out the boat, you've got wind gear. You can sort of validate which model is doing the better job of it. But there should definitely be some consensus. And you'd probably, just from historical reasons, you'd probably take this more southerly route here. So for all those models, we can run it through. So what we're doing with the modeling is it's taking, say, the PWG 1 kilometer high resolution models, then it's going to the 8K, then the 50K, and then it's taking that all the way along the route, and it's doing that with all the different models. Okay, so it's the highest resolution data set available. Now, this is great, and you need to dig into this. You want to always understand the general play, because what you've got up here, we've got something awful system here. That's not going to impact us, but it could do. We want to know where these things are at. That could affect sea state. So it's really important to always have a really good understanding of the general play of the whole Atlantic, to be fair. Now, the real good oil is when I jump into tables. So once I jump into tables, we have a massive data set. So we start off with graphs. Okay, so this is the true wind speed, as you can see, and the models are sort of all over the place. It looks like it was fairly light breeze at the start, and that's maybe why there was so much divergence there. So true wind speed. We've got true wind direction. We've got true wind angle. We've got the rain. And why rain's important, it's not, might want to put my Musto jacket on. If there's rain and the associated cape with that, there could well be some thunderous activity. Okay, so we've got some elevated cape here. So that's sort of slightly concerning for me, because cape is about energy in the air. If we have elevated cape, potential for some thunderous activity. So that's all about, good watch keeping during the day. Some rain squalls on the horizon. How to manage that. You could have at night time having the radar on, just making sure you're trying to dodge these things, because you can move around them. There's no point just getting caught in them. So that's the cape. We've got the temperature as we go further south, it's getting warmer. Pressure gives you an idea of the barometer. And we get into the wave height. Okay, so the wave height, I've got it set to meters, so nothing massive. Wave direction, wave period. Period's always important. And the current throughout the route. Then we've got current speed and direction. And this is my favorite here, this roll. So when I talked about the, your boat and then doing the wave polars, the output is here. So roll, it's not 4 degrees roll port to starboard. It's root mean squared. Don't get too concerned how it's worked out. But what I can tell you, anything over 4 is pretty uncomfortable on the vessel. Okay, so it's telling me for this period of time, and it's not the full route because we actually don't have this wave data out here, but for this first part, certainly, I'm not seeing anything over 4. And if I roll down here to vertical acceleration, which is another metric, anything over 0.2, it is difficult to perform tasks and seasickness. And I've validated a fair bit with my team, deliveries where it's been over that, and people that don't normally get sick are feeling pretty crook. So that's that one. And the slamming incidents, that's another metric from there, but you won't probably see that unless you're going upwind. So my workflow is we do the weather routing, we have a look at that general synoptic overview, we have a look at that, we look at the animation playing it through, but I'm always coming into here. Okay, now if we go into here, wind, what I have here is a summary of that route. Now, first thing I want to always check is did I set my polars up? There's no point looking at this if, by mistake I'd chosen a Volvo 70 or something, so that's right. Polar speed adjustment looks right. My motoring looks right. Then I'm having a look at these other things. So start time, finish time, time taken, how much motoring. Like I say, I don't have endless diesel. It doesn't look too bad to me. It's 17 days across the board. Distance 2,798 nautical miles. Average speed looks about right. But when you're first setting this up, you want to dig in here because you want to go, if I've got 8 knots of breeze and I'm going downwind, so the P means I'm on port at 140, so wind is after the beam at 140 degrees. Does my boat do 5.7 knots? Is that unreasonable? So I would be just having a bit of a look through here. This is way before departure, just making sure it look reasonable. So for my boat, at 7 or 8 knots of breeze, at sort of 117, am I doing 6.3 knots? Because if you're putting stupid input in, you're going to get stupid output. So make sure this is all reasonable. Okay. So where this would be really good on passage is you're coming through here and we're into it. And, you can see that sail chart stuff. I've got mainsail and headsail. It's actually telling me where I potentially could have a sail change. So here it's telling me it's a sail change. And I'm going from the spinnaker, it's in and out of potentially the spinnaker and the poled out headsail, running deep downwind. Okay, but what I'd be concerned of looking through here, if there's I'd have had to reef the main at any point in time. So this is a really good, obviously another tool for you. But looking through here, we can see we're downwind, and I'm just picking on one model, the PWG at this stage, but we start off on port, then we're on starboard all the way down. It's pretty deep angles, 164. It's a bit more, it gets a bit tighter, but it's still all downwind on starboard. There could be a jibe, but that's really up to me. That's probably a day and a half into it. So because I'm running the weather routing again, I'm not getting too far down the list. So I'd probably be running down here maybe a day, because I'm always going to be rerunning the weather routing every 12 hours. And as you can see, we have all the models here. So there'll be some consensus. If there's no consensus, then it's the model, which is, like I said before, it's the one that's matching your onboard conditions, because you're doing it. You're the one out there. You can see the sea state. you've got a good feeling of what's actually happening. So I tend to, you know, just dig into that one a little bit more. So the same across the top here, we have a summary. So the summary is basically a summary, an executive summary. So it's exactly the same stuff, but it's given you maximum wind speed. It's given you some potentially maximum gust. It's given you maximum cape for that route and the percentage of upwind. We never want to go upwind, do we? So perfect. No, there's no upwind. It's mainly reaching and downwind. And it gives me bands of, 25% across this. Well, 5% on this model here, 9% on the ECMWF, 91% downwind. What do we got here? Waves. So we got a whole bunch of data here, so it's worth having a look at that. We do have the waypoints. The waypoints for every data point, I guess, on the routes themselves. I don't. You can export this. You can go across to here, and you can export the routes. Okay. I don't tend to do that. I just put a waypoint. Maybe I put, I'll have a look where maybe there was an event where was a potential jibe. Maybe I've got that waypoint in, but it's a general guide for, hand steering or, I want you to course average that to get to that waypoint, or, the autopilot sort of set to get to that waypoint. I'm not getting too carried away of importing all this stuff, because at the end of the day, it's going to change. So when I run the routing again, it's changed. As you saw before, the graph detail, we have that in. If you're a table type of person, you can see the breakdown of information we have here: combined wind and wave and swell. Got the wind, primary, secondary, tertiary. You can have a bit of a look at this. And we've got the current. So that's the same sort of thing. What I will say is a speed and direction. What I will say, where you see these here, these little orange things, they're warnings. They're not absolutes, just because it says it's going to be a thunderstorm, there might not be. But what it's saying to me, there's some elevated cape at that time, because that's in the morning. Maybe we're prudent. Maybe we put a reef in always before nightfall. But if we don't, and we saw this, potentially we should on this night put a reef in before nightfall. So this is what these warnings are. These ones here are just when it's a sail change. So orange are warnings. These are sail changes. Atmosphere, I spend a fair bit of time in here. My best friend is the barometer, and I can sort of help validate by looking through here. And once again, it's for all the different models. So we have air temperature, there's rain, there's cape, there's fog, there's lightning. Okay, potential for lightning. So that's pretty much that there. So if I go back to the map, so you've got used to the weather routing. You sort of understand how it works. You've run some routes, you've run some where you want to go, and now you're trying to work out when to go. Unless you're racing, you've got to decide when to go. So how I generally do that is I'll be in the Canaries, and I'll have a weather map set up, and I will go to maps, and I will go to probably 100-kilometer resolution, and I would just want to get a real good understanding 10 days out of the general play. I want to be an expert on what's happening. Just understand what's this here, where's it going, what's this low, and I'll just keep looking at this. And then what I'll probably do, well, I will do about 5 days out, because if you think about all the models, they're from now and they go out 10 days. So if I'm going to start running weather routing 10 days out, I'll be getting what we call the ECMWF ensemble model, which is nothing wrong with that, but it's not like getting the real data. Okay, so you really want to be looking at this here, just giving me a real good play for it. Now from there, I would be running into the departure planning. So once again, we have sail planning, we have power planning. So sail planning, it's doing the weather routing, but it's giving you basically days and different models, but not that the weather routing doesn't, but you choose 4 models here. So I've chosen PWG, ECMWF, GFS, and UKMO, and it's working off the same. I don't have to muck around here. It's the same stuff, but I'll go into sail planning back in here. Now, what day should we go? Let's have a look at this. So now I'm 5 days out, and I'm really going to start digging into this. So up here, you can change the time. I'm in New Zealand, but you can change that to your time zone. I've got a start time, and then I can space these departures how I see fit, hourly to 24 hourly. Because I'm doing 2,700 nautical miles, it's probably going to be 24 hourly for me, but for coastal stuff, it could be 3 hourly or whatever it is, hourly. And I can change the start day, and I can change the time of this. But let's just run this. So what it's doing is taking these models, it's running some weather routing. Let's have a look at it. I'll just talk about models actually while we're here, because while this calculates the models, I mean, I don't think it's easy to get model bias because you've been at the bar and someone's told you that GFS is the winner, and it could well be the winner. But there's a reason we have all these models, is because you miss things. It's if there's consensus, then you have more reassurance of the conditions you're going to be faced with. If we could just do weather routing, with one model, we would do it, but there's really no clear winner. Okay. What I will say with a bit of bias is that probably the ECMWF longer term does the better job. So if I'm looking at 10 days out, 8 days out, 7 days out, just looking at the maps, it's probably the ECMWF, but I don't ignore the other models. That's really important. So it's still doing its thing. It's calculating its business here. There we go. So what we've got here, what we have here is we have the, it started on PWG weather map, and I've got 4 blue lines here. Let's just turn the GMDSS off. So the GMDS I can turn off. Zoom controls. Right. So here we are. So we've got these 4 routes. And what it is, to move this, when we play this through, we're basically getting these white boats move on those 4 different routes. Okay, so that's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Right, and that takes us all the way into the finish. We can do that for all the models that we've chosen. So that's great. I play that forward. You can sort of see how the systems sort of flow through. But what you want to do is come into here. So what we have here is you can analyze like an executive summary quite quickly the different departures. So departure 1, departure 2, departure 3, departure 4. And what I have here is this is a summarized, averaged set of data, right? So if we go, we've got passage time, we've got motoring time, I've got max wind speed, I've got some other data sets here, Cape. So what we sort of saw before, but it's trying to establish when to leave. So once again, no upwind. We don't want upwind. Reaching, downwind, and some other data sets. Okay, if you want to have a look at the models themselves, you could click on this one here, and it gives for each departure day 1, departure 2, all that model information. So where I use this is, and if I'm one day sort of looking better than the other, then I will shift back into the weather routing. And what I do there is just head back to the weather routing. So let's head back to the weather routing. Based on this information, I would then just go back into weather routing here, sail routing. And what I would do here is, if that departure planning said tomorrow's a much better day, I would just then change the day here. Okay, so I could just change that. Maybe tomorrow was the time, or maybe it's that, if I'd staggered it 12 hourly, maybe it's later in the day when I do it. So you have a lot of control here, but then I would be, I'm into that sort of 3 days out stuff, 2 days out. I'm running this weather routing twice a day. I always win those models because it can change, and especially when it seems tough going, and maybe it changes, so it opens up for you. Well, it did for a passage for me where I kept analyzing, and it wasn't till that sort of, I guess, that almost the morning of the passage where it sort of the system hadn't developed and we were on our way. So it's a really, really strong tool, but you need to know how to use it. And what I would do is be practicing with it. Yeah, just get a good feel for it. Now let's just run another route. Let's run another route. How are we going for time, Nick?
Pretty good, I think. Again,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have I missed that while this is going? What do you want me to cover? Have I probably missed lots of things?
No, I think it's good. I mean, this is good questions, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think just carry on. It's you're covering the bits that I think that people need to know about at a high level, and they can always dig in and ask different questions as they use the software more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I think please come into support, because no question's a silly one. We'll answer it, and we'll try to answer it best we can. But yeah, just practice makes perfect here. So I'll just keep running the routing and having a good look at it. That's definitely what you should be doing.
Yep.
There we go. Sorry if I've seemed quite awkward, people, because all these Zoom controls make it life difficult. So here we've run another route here. Let's have a look. So if I was just to analyze this out a bit, so for me, like I say, I would probably be doing this more southern route. So what we've got here is we've got, I'm looking at the PWG. Based on that, it's probably the PWE, which is probably doing for me, or probably want to be coming down here. But what we're going to be doing, as we said before, is every 12 hours we will be bringing this forward. Thunderstorms here. So you'll see these across or hopefully not. You'll see these, but like I said, with the warnings in the tables, you're going to get these on the route. So I wouldn't turn these off. I'd have them there, but as I said before, I wouldn't have those as an absolute. It's basically where the cape's sitting. And we actually have a really good article, which our Arnaud, our famous French meteorologist who works with PredictWind, has done. I strongly suggest, and hopefully the team can probably put that link up into the webinar, just about cloud activity, because it's probably the cloud activity that you're going to find which can catch you out, because within the grids themselves or the weather maps, it doesn't show that detail. So this is giving you a heads up, but it's not an absolute. You're going to have to, have your head out of the boat, and you'll be periods of time where there could be thunderous activity. Just making sure, like I said before, that you've got good watch keeping, looking at the horizon, and obviously with the radar, you can with a rain score, you should be able to pick it up on a radar. Okay. Where was I going here? Yeah, I just want to reiterate this role stuff. I just think this is so important. I've coming out of Fiji back to New Zealand. I use this a lot just to even to work out my departures because I'm not getting the full data set here. I'm just getting the first 10 days. So the wave data goes out 10 days, but you're not missing out on it because every 12 hours it's going to be extending out. Okay. What we actually do for the wind models is say at the end of the PWG, at the 10 days, we're using the ECMWF ensemble. So we're taking the best match at that point in time to the ECMWF model, and then we're taking that out to 30 days. Okay, so this where we've probably got where we are here in this sort of more of a trade belt. Well, we used to just average it before, so it's way better than last year, this data set. So it's not so much a climate average, which would be, it's not good when you're not in trade belts, but I guess from day 10 to day 30, this is why there's no data set. That's why you want to download the weather every 12 hours. So it's the real data, okay, just not the back end. The back end of this route here is the ECMWF ensemble, okay, and maybe the team can put some words together for that, or we could, yeah, have with a help article for you. But this role here, this role, this vertical acceleration, this is a complete game changer. Like I validated it myself a lot offshore, and so have a lot of our customers. So it's not just some game we're playing here. It's pretty real. So dig into this. So when you're about to go, that 1 or 2 days out, really dig into that metric there. I think that's about it from me, Nick. I'm starting to waffle on. So
Waffle's good.
waffles,
Um,
weather waffle.
uh, um, just for everyone, we will talk about Data Hub integration next week. Um, next week, Smiley's actually on holiday, and so you're going to get Kieran and myself doing the webinar. So that's really going to be, we are going to talk about some comms, that Data Hub integration, and using the offshore app on any connection. Whether you've got your uh, whatever connection type you want. So whether it's a Iridium Go exec, Starlink, um, if you still can use SSB. Yeah, we'll be covering off just how to use that software. So a lot of the same sort of routing things, but you'll just hear it from someone else. And sometimes you pick up different things from different people. It's we all use the software ever so slightly differently, and so that's can be quite interesting. One thing I'd thought that the reason behind the sale charts, Smiley, I thought might be nice to cover off. Um, Sort of what we are actually doing with those things about, sort of from a safety perspective.
Yeah, sure. So the sale chart, there's a sales thing here. So also across here, I probably didn't mention that we've got it here, but it gives you a period of time or point in time on that route where, you could be down into 3 reefs. Okay. So it's about when you're sailing your boat, you've got to develop a bit of a playbook. So it'd be nice to know that, hey, yeah, we're going to be down into 3 reefs at some point in time. It's actually going to be, looks like it's going to be 2 in the morning. So we're cruising here. We're not racing. Let's get into the 3 reef already. Let's just set the boat up. Let's get it in that mode for those conditions. Okay, so that's where this sort of comes into play. Is that how you see it, Nick?
Yeah. Just that giving the people the heads up about being prepared, doing things early rather than doing them where you're potentially in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
No one wants to be trying to, change sails, reef sails when you're running downwind at 160 degrees true wind angle and 30 knots, trying to work out how to, get reduce the mainsail, and at 3 o'clock in the morning you got people on deck and it's a dangerous situation. There's no need to put yourself in that situation, and so that's what the sail charts are really about
Yeah.
for the cruising market is that just helping you think ahead, and especially when you get into the passage, you get a bit tired. You're not always thinking ahead as much as you should.
Yeah, it's really
That's-
important. And I think, I mean, this here was in the sailing world for a racing world, I should say, because they're just wanting making those decisions. But I think there's real spin-off here into the cruising world for all those reasons. Just all that heads up. And it's also just going on about heads up stuff. If you're on a route and you see that elevation, you might be coming back across the Atlantic, which is clearly a more difficult crossing. You're 3 weeks at sea, there could be elevation of above 4, above point 0.2, but it gives you that heads up that, come on, let's go and relash down that tender again. Let's all those jerry cans that you're poorly tied on, go and sort those out again. Or maybe it's flat calm now. Let's get the rest of the diesel into the tanks. Let's not delay all that stuff. There's nothing worse than salt water in the diesel tank. So yeah, it's all pretty much heads up stuff. And yeah, it doesn't matter how good you are, you do get tired, and that's when mistakes happen. So yeah, any heads up stuff's good. And
yeah.
also, I guess CSIP tablets. If you see a period where it's going to be rough, through that roll metric, that vertical acceleration metric, get some patches on the back of the neck or into people before that. So it's got time to work. Anyway, I could keep going on for hours, Nick, and everyone's probably better than me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just that thinking ahead thing, and I think that's a lot of what these sort of safety parameters and warnings and sail changes are all about, is helping us all, jog our brains into doing things better and making better decisions. Okay, so let's wrap that up there, and yeah, thank you very much for joining us.